At 10:17 p.m., my wife's phone lit up on the kitchen counter while she stood upstairs putting our baby to sleep. I wasn't snooping. God, I wish I had been. At least then I could have blamed myself for what happened next. But no. I was standing there half asleep in sweatpants, reheating leftover chili after a 14-hour shift crawling through attics and replacing broken furnaces across Columbus, Ohio. My knees hurt. My lower back felt like rusted metal. And all I wanted was 10 quiet minutes before bed. Then her phone buzzed. One message. One sentence. How's our little guy doing tonight? I stared at the screen. The sender's name hit harder than the message itself. Victor Langley. My wife's boss. Regional director at the pharmaceutical company where Emily worked. 46 years old. Tailored suits. Expensive watches. The kind of man who looked polished even holding a paper coffee cup. And according to the message glowing in front of me, apparently he and my wife shared a son together. Or at least that's what my exhausted brain thought in that moment. Upstairs, I heard the nursery floor creak softly. Emily humming. The same soft little melody she always sang while rocking Oliver to sleep. My stomach tightened so suddenly I actually had to grip the edge of the counter. Maybe there was another explanation. Maybe he called every employee's kid, our little guy. Maybe corporate people were just weirdly familiar. Maybe I was losing my mind from sleep deprivation. But then another message came through. Did he finally stop crying after his bottle? My blood went cold. Not the baby. Not your son. Like Victor already knew him. Like Victor had been there. I looked toward the stairs. Then back at the phone. The message thread was deleted. Completely empty. That's the moment something inside me shifted. Because innocent people don't erase conversations. I'm Michael Carter. 51 years old. I own a small plumbing company outside Columbus. 4 trucks. 7 employees if nobody calls off. I spent most of my life working with my hands while richer men sat behind desks pretending they worked harder. Emily was 42. Beautiful in that effortless way that sneaks up on you. She could wear one of my old Ohio State hoodies and still stop me in my tracks after 19 years of marriage. We spent nearly 8 years trying to have a baby. Failed treatments. Miscarriages. Savings accounts drained dry. I held her while she cried on bathroom floors after negative pregnancy tests. I sat beside her through hormone injections and doctor appointments and one brutal winter where she stopped speaking to almost everyone because she couldn't handle hearing about other women getting pregnant. When Oliver was born 3 months earlier, I thought we survived the hardest chapter of our lives. Turns out, we were just entering it. The nursery door upstairs opened. Panic snapped through me instantly. I grabbed Emily's phone, took photos of both messages, and sent them to myself before placing the phone exactly where it had been. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped it. Then Oliver cried upstairs. A tired little newborn cry. And immediately Emily's voice softened. There's Mommy's sweet boy. I closed my eyes. That word hit differently now. Mommy. My chest felt tight. Suddenly every memory started rearranging itself in my head. Late nights at work. Phone turned face down during dinner. Extra makeup before staff meetings. The sudden gym membership. The way Emily smiled at texts she never explained. Little things. Tiny things. That's the ugly truth about betrayal after 40. It's usually not one massive moment. It's hundreds of tiny moments finally connecting together. I walked into the living room and sat in darkness while the TV played muted sports highlights nobody was watching. My son's little stuffed elephant sat beside me on the couch. I picked it up absent-mindedly. And for the first time in my entire life, I wondered if my son was actually mine. The thought physically hurt. Like somebody pressing a knife slowly between my ribs. A few minutes later, Emily came downstairs holding Oliver against her shoulder. She smiled when she saw me. And that almost destroyed me. Because she looked normal. Comfortable. Safe. Like she had no idea my entire world had just cracked open. You okay? She asked softly. I forced a nod. Just tired. She handed me Oliver carefully. The second he settled into my arms, everything inside me collapsed even further. His tiny fingers wrapped around mine instantly. Trusting me completely. Emily leaned down and kissed my cheek. Then her phone buzzed again on the counter. She moved too fast this time. Too nervous. Too automatic. She grabbed it before I could even glance at the screen. And right there, in that tiny movement, I knew. Not suspected. Knew. My wife was hiding something. And deep down, I think she knew I'd finally seen it. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for 5 minutes. Emily curled against my shoulder around midnight like she always did, warm and familiar, while Oliver slept in the bassinet beside our bed making those tiny newborn breathing noises that somehow sound louder at 3 in the morning. And I just lay there staring at the ceiling. Listening. Thinking. Breaking apart quietly beside the woman I'd trusted for almost 2 decades. At 2:11 a.m., Emily's phone lit up again on her nightstand. This time she grabbed it before I could move. Too fast. Too careful. Then she slipped out of bed whispering something about not wanting to wake the baby. I listened to her footsteps disappear downstairs. A minute later, I heard the back patio door slide open. She was taking the call outside. In October. At 2 in the morning. My chest tightened so hard it actually became difficult to breathe. I got out of bed slowly and walked to the nursery instead. Oliver was asleep in his crib now, wrapped in a little blue blanket my sister had knitted before he was born. Moonlight from the window fell across his tiny face. He looked peaceful. Safe. Completely unaware his father was standing 6 feet away trying not to fall apart. I stared at him for a long time. Then I did something I never thought I'd do in my life. I opened Facebook and searched for Claire Langley, Victor's wife. Her profile picture showed a woman around my age standing beside 2 teenage girls near a lake somewhere in Michigan. Normal family photo. Normal smiles. The kind of picture people post when they think their life is stable. I almost closed the app right there. Almost convinced myself to ignore everything. Because once you drag another family into your disaster, there's no undoing it. But then I remembered the deleted messages. Our little guy. And suddenly my hands moved before my conscience could stop them. I sent her the screenshots. Underneath them I typed 7 words. I think we're being lied to. Then I locked my phone and sat alone in the nursery rocking chair while my wife whispered to another man outside. The next morning felt surreal. Emily made pancakes. Oliver spit up on my shoulder. The dog barked at squirrels outside the kitchen window. Normal life kept moving forward while my brain felt trapped underwater. Emily acted perfectly normal. That somehow hurt worse. She kissed me goodbye before leaving for work. Love you, she said automatically. I stared at her for half a second too long before answering. You too. The lie tasted disgusting. Around noon, my phone buzzed during a service call. Unknown number. I answered while sitting in my truck outside a retirement community. A woman's voice came through shaky and quiet. Michael Carter? Yes. Pause. Then. This is Claire Langley. Everything inside me went still. Traffic passed outside my windshield while neither of us spoke for a second. Finally she whispered, "How long has this been happening?" That question nearly broke me because the truth was, I didn't know. I found out last night, I admitted. I heard her breathing unevenly on the other end. Then a tiny laugh escaped her. Not happy. The kind of laugh people make when reality becomes too painful to process normally. I knew something was wrong, she whispered. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. What do you mean? He's been distant for months. Secretive. Always traveling. Always protecting his phone. Her voice cracked slightly. I thought maybe he was having an affair, but, your baby? Neither of us finished the sentence. We didn't need to. A silence settled between 2 strangers whose lives had suddenly collided in the worst possible way. Then Claire quietly said something that changed everything. There's more. My stomach dropped instantly. What more? I checked our phone records after your message. Her breathing shook again. Michael, they've been talking hundreds of times a month. I closed my eyes. Hundreds. Not flirting. Not a mistake. A relationship. A real one. Claire continued softly, almost mechanically now. There are hotel charges too. Weekend trips Victor claimed were conferences. Transfers from our joint account. She paused. And your wife's number appears constantly. Every word felt like another brick crushing my chest. I looked out through my windshield at an elderly man watering flowers outside his apartment building. Normal life. Normal morning. Meanwhile my marriage was quietly disintegrating through a phone speaker. I'm sorry, Claire whispered suddenly. That caught me off guard. For what? For being the person telling you this. I rubbed a hand over my face slowly. No, I said honestly. Don't apologize for the truth. For a second neither of us spoke. Then Claire lowered her voice. There's something else you should know. The tone in her voice made my pulse spike immediately. What? Another pause. Then. Victor thinks the baby might be his. The world stopped. Literally stopped. I don't remember breathing. I don't remember blinking. I just remember staring through the windshield while those words echoed inside my skull like gunshots. The baby might be his. My knees suddenly felt weak even sitting down. No, I whispered automatically. But even as I said it, I remembered the text. Our little guy. The crying. The bottles. The familiarity. Claire kept talking carefully like she was trying not to shatter me completely. I found messages between them. He asked if Oliver had her eyes. Her voice cracked again. Michael. I think they've talked about this before. I leaned forward against the steering wheel. Everything hurt. My chest. My stomach. My head. Worst of all, my heart. Because once somebody plants that thought in your mind, once you question whether your child is yours, you can never fully go back to the person you were before hearing it. Claire finally asked the question neither of us wanted to face. So what do we do now? I stared at my wedding ring gripping the steering wheel. Then I thought about Oliver sleeping against my chest every night. His tiny fingers. His little hiccups after bottles. The way he calmed down whenever I held him. And quietly, very quietly, I answered. First, I swallowed hard. First I find out if he's my son. The DNA kit arrived 3 days later in a plain brown envelope sitting beside a box of diapers on our front porch. Emily carried both inside without noticing anything. More plumbing supplies? She asked casually while dropping the package onto the kitchen counter. Something like that, I muttered. That sentence stayed with me afterward. Because lying changes you. Even when the lie feels justified. Especially when it's to someone you once told every single truth to. The next 10 days became the longest stretch of my entire life. Not like those over-the-top movies where suspicious music plays every time somebody looks at their phone. No. Real betrayal is quieter than that. It lives in tiny details. Emily smiling down at texts she immediately hid. Her taking calls in the laundry room. The sudden password change on her phone. The way she'd angle her screen away from me automatically now. Little things. But once trust cracks, your mind starts turning every movement into evidence. Meanwhile, Oliver kept being Oliver. He cried at 3 a.m. Spit formula on my work shirts. And every time I held him, I felt two completely opposite emotions at once. Love and fear. One afternoon, I nearly rear-ended somebody at a stoplight because I caught myself staring at a father carrying a baby into a grocery store. The guy looked exhausted, happy, normal. And suddenly I found myself wondering if he'd ever had to question whether his child belonged to him. The light turned green. Somebody honked behind me. I didn't move for 3 seconds. That became my life. Made those weird tiny dinosaur noises babies make while sleeping. I started noticing everything. Not dramatically. Forgetting things. Missing turns while driving. Staring into space during conversations. I even forgot a service appointment for the first time in years. Mrs. Holloway, 82 years old, sweet woman, always baked cookies during furnace repairs, actually called asking if I was feeling okay. You never forget appointments, Michael. I blamed lack of sleep from the baby. Which technically wasn't a lie. At night, Emily still curled against me in bed sometimes. That part nearly destroyed me. Because muscle memory inside a marriage is powerful. 19 years builds habits your body remembers even when your heart feels shattered. One night around 1:30 a.m., Oliver started crying through the baby monitor. Emily groaned softly beside me. I'll get him, I whispered. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled faintly like coffee grounds and baby formula. I warmed a bottle while Oliver fussed against my shoulder. Then I sat in the recliner feeding him slowly in the dark. And suddenly, I started crying. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just silent, exhausted tears rolling down my face while this tiny little human stared up at me with complete trust in his eyes that I remember thinking something that terrified me afterward. If this baby isn't mine, I don't know if I survive it. Because by then, biology didn't even matter emotionally anymore. I already loved him completely. The next morning, Emily found me asleep in the recliner still holding Oliver against my chest. She smiled softly. You're such a good dad. That sentence almost broke me in half. Instead, I just nodded and reached for my coffee. Pretending became the hardest part. Pretending I didn't know. Pretending I wasn't slowly drowning beside her. Pretending our marriage didn't suddenly feel unstable beneath every conversation that I got home early after a canceled service call. Emily was standing on the back patio talking quietly on her phone. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. God knows I wasn't. But then I heard Victor's name. And I froze immediately. Emily's voice sounded tense. No, listen to me, she whispered sharply. If Michael finds out everything, we're screwed. Silence. Then. I know what you promised. Another pause. I can't keep doing this. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. Then came Thursday. The day everything shifted again. Then Emily turned suddenly and saw me standing inside near the sliding glass door. For half a second, pure panic flashed across her face. Then it vanished. Just like that. Hey, she said too quickly. You're home early. Canceled appointment. She nodded too fast. That was my sister. And in that exact moment, I realized something terrifying. My wife had become very good at lying to me. Not clumsy. Not nervous. Professional. Smooth. That realization hurt worse than the affair itself somehow. Because it meant deception wasn't new anymore. It meant practice. 3 days later, the DNA results arrived. I couldn't open them at home. I couldn't sit across from Emily at the kitchen table pretending everything was normal while holding an envelope capable of destroying my entire life. So I drove 40 minutes north until I ended up parked outside a Dairy Queen beside Interstate 71 with the heater blasting against the November cold. I remember every stupid detail about that moment. Country music playing quietly through the speakers. French fry smell drifting through the parking lot. A teenage employee laughing near the drive-through window. Meanwhile, my hands shook opening the envelope. I stared at the folded papers for nearly a full minute before finally forcing myself to read them. The probability of paternity, 99.99%. I stopped breathing. Read it again. Then again. And suddenly I was sobbing so hard I had to lean forward against the steering wheel. Oliver was mine. Mine. The relief hit first. Pure overwhelming relief. Like somebody pulling me out of deep water right before drowning. Rage? Real rage. Because Emily cheated. She lied. And somehow she still let me spend nearly 2 weeks wondering whether my own son belonged to another man. I sat there crying in that parking lot for almost 15 minutes. Not because I was weak. Because emotional pain does not care how old you are. At 51 years old, I had never felt heartbreak like that before. Eventually, I grabbed my phone and called Claire. She answered instantly. Well, she asked quietly. But then another emotion came rushing in immediately after that. I wiped my face hard with my sleeve. He's mine. Claire exhaled sharply. Oh, thank God. I laughed bitterly. Yeah, I whispered. Thank God. But the truth was, the DNA result didn't fix anything. It almost made the betrayal worse. Because now this wasn't about confusion anymore. It was about choice. Emily knowingly risked destroying our family anyway. Then Claire said something that made my stomach tighten all over again. There's another problem. I closed my eyes. Of course there is. Victor's company started auditing expense reports this week. Her voice lowered carefully. And Michael, I think he's panicking. I leaned back slowly in the driver's seat. What does that have to do with us? Silence. Then Claire whispered. I found messages saying he promised Emily he'd leave me after the holiday charity gala next Saturday. My grip tightened on the phone, and I think your wife still believes him. I almost didn't go. Twice actually. The first time was Wednesday night while sitting alone in my garage beside stacked diaper boxes and old fishing gear drinking gas station coffee from a styrofoam cup. The second time was Saturday afternoon when Emily stood upstairs getting ready for the charity gala while I fed Oliver mashed bananas in the kitchen. Normal life kept happening around the collapse of my marriage. That was the strangest part. The dishwasher still ran. Bills still arrived. The dog still barked at delivery drivers. And somehow you were expected to function normally while your entire reality quietly rotted underneath you. Emily came downstairs around 6 wearing a dark emerald dress I'd never seen before. Simple. Elegant. Beautiful. For one dangerous second. She looked like the woman I married at 23. You sure you don't want to come tonight? She asked while fastening an earring. Spouses are invited. I kept wiping banana from Oliver's tiny hands. Nah, I muttered. Somebody's gotta stay with this little guy. The second I said it, Emily froze almost invisibly. Just 1 second. But I saw it. Her eyes flickered toward me. Searching. Wondering. Then her expression smoothed over again. You've seemed distant lately, she said carefully. That I finally looked at her. And for the first time in 19 years, I saw guilt sitting behind her eyes. Not enough guilt to stop cheating, but enough to recognize the damage. I'm tired, I answered quietly. That's not all. No, it wasn't. But neither of us said the truth out loud. Not yet. Emily kissed Oliver's forehead. Then mine. Don't stay up too late, she whispered. The front door closed behind her 30 seconds later. At 6:41 p.m., Claire texted me. If you're coming, auditors confirmed attendance. I stared at the message. Then down at Oliver chewing on a stuffed giraffe toy in his high chair. And suddenly, something inside me settled. Not rage. Not revenge. Clarity. By 7:15, Oliver was at my sister's house across town. And I was driving toward downtown Columbus through cold November rain. The hotel ballroom glowed gold beneath crystal chandeliers when I arrived. Doctors. Executives. Corporate donors holding wine glasses while pretending to care about charity auctions. The kind of room where expensive people say polished things. Claire met me near registration. She looked exhausted, but calmer somehow. You came, she whispered. Yeah. You okay? I almost laughed. Nope. That actually made her smile a little. Then I saw them. Across the ballroom. Emily standing beside Victor laughing at something one of the executives said. His hand rested lightly near the small of her back. Comfortable. Familiar. Intimate. The sight hit harder than I expected. Not because she looked happy. Because she looked normal. Like our marriage wasn't already bleeding out behind the scenes. Claire noticed me staring. You don't have to do this tonight. But I remembered sitting alone in my truck opening DNA results. That I remembered crying while feeding Oliver at 2 in the morning. I remembered wondering whether my son belonged to another man. Yeah, I said quietly. I do. Around 8:20 Victor spotted us. And the exact second he realized Claire and I were standing together, his face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. The confident corporate smile cracked for half a second before returning. He walked toward us holding a whiskey glass. Michael, he said carefully. Didn't expect to see you here. No kidding. Emily turned pale instantly beside him. Victor glanced between Claire and me quickly. Smart man. He understood immediately. What exactly is this? He asked quietly. I answered before Claire could. A conversation. His jaw tightened. Not here. Funny. Now he cared about privacy. Emily stepped toward me carefully. Michael. I raised one hand. Not now. That hurt her. I saw it immediately. And despite everything, part of me hated causing her pain. Victor forced another smile toward nearby guests passing by, then leaned closer. Can we speak privately? A few minutes later, he pulled me into a side hallway near the elevators. The second we were alone, his entire tone changed. Look, he muttered quietly. Whatever Emily told you. She didn't tell me anything. That stopped him cold. I watched calculations happening behind his eyes. Then came the sentence that erased every ounce of sympathy I could have had for him. Name your number. I blinked slowly. What? You're upset. I understand that. He lowered his voice further. But ugly divorces help nobody. I stared at him in disbelief. Not because he offered money. Because he genuinely believed money mattered more than my family. My son is 3 months old, I said quietly. Victor rubbed his forehead impatiently. Michael, let's not make this emotional. That sentence nearly made me hit him. Nearly. Instead, I pulled out my phone. And pressed play. Victor's recorded voice filled the hallway softly. Everybody walks away cleaner if you keep this private. His face drained white instantly. At the same moment, 2 auditors rounded the corner holding folders. Mr. Langley? One asked calmly. We need clarification regarding several reimbursement reports. Nobody spoke. Victor looked trapped for the first time all night. Then Claire quietly handed the auditors an envelope. Printed emails. Hotel receipts. Bank transfers. Evidence that I watched panic fully hit Victor Langley in real time. Not fear about losing Emily. Not fear about hurting families. Fear of consequences. That told me everything about the kind of man he truly was. Emily stared at him in disbelief. You told me you loved me. Victor actually laughed. A short, irritated laugh. Emily, please. And just like that, I saw her finally understand she was never special to him. Just convenient. Disposable. The hallway fell silent. Then one auditor spoke calmly. Mr. Langley, corporate will require a formal meeting Monday morning. Victor straightened immediately. You're seriously doing this here? You created the situation, sir. That shut him up. Hotel security appeared a few minutes later. No screaming. No dramatic fight. Just quiet humiliation. The kind that spreads slowly through rooms full of wealthy people pretending not to stare. Victor looked at Emily one last time before leaving. Not with regret. With resentment. That seemed to break something inside her completely. Afterward, Emily and I rode the elevator downstairs in silence. Outside, freezing air hit us immediately. Traffic rolled through wet streets beneath glowing hotel lights. Finally, Emily whispered, I never meant for this to happen. I laughed once. Not cruelly. Just tired. Really? Tears rolled down her face. It started during the IVF treatments. You pulled away. I stared toward the street quietly. There it is, I murmured. What? The excuse. She flinched. He listened to me, she whispered. He made me feel seen. I nodded slowly. And what did I make you feel? Emily started crying harder. Because deep down, she knew that I stood beside her through every failed pregnancy, every injection, every breakdown, every night she believed her body had failed. And somehow, I still became the last person to know my own marriage was dying. Finally I looked directly at her. Maybe she loved me once. Maybe part of her still did. But love without loyalty eventually becomes something else. I think we need to separate, I said quietly. Emily closed her eyes, then nodded. 1 year later, my house sounded different, quieter. Oliver was 15 months old by then. Every other week the place exploded with toys, cartoons, tiny sneakers and laughter. Then he'd go back to Emily's townhouse for a few days. And silence returned again. People don't talk enough about divorce after 50. The silence. How strange it feels eating leftovers alone after decades beside somebody. But healing happened slowly. Saturday mornings fishing again. Oliver falling asleep on my chest during football games. My sister forcing me back into church groups where I eventually met a woman named Rachel who laughed with her whole face instead of trying to look elegant doing it. Nothing dramatic. Just peace. The last serious conversation Emily and I ever had happened before Oliver's first birthday. She stood quietly near my doorway while Oliver chased the dog through the living room. Then she whispered, "Thank you." For what? For not trying to destroy me. That sat between us a long time. Because the truth was, I could have. There were opportunities. But eventually I realized something important. Pain spreads. Humiliation spreads. Bitterness spreads too. And eventually, someone has to decide to stop passing it around. That didn't make Emily innocent. Didn't erase the betrayal. But Oliver deserved at least one parent who wasn't consumed by hatred. That night after Emily left, I sat on the floor building block towers with my son while rain tapped softly against the windows. Oliver knocked the tower over and laughed so hard he hiccuped. And sitting there at 52 years old in sweatpants beside scattered toy blocks, I realized something unexpected. My life hadn't ended. It had changed. Painfully. Messily. but not permanently ruined. Because betrayal changes people. But it doesn't get to decide who you become afterward.